During the Vietnam War, one of the correspondents who covered the war for the New York Times was a woman called Gloria Emerson. And in her memoirs, she describes her reaction to the carnage one night. Once I got so desperate, the Americans had started bombing Hanoi. I ran to the National Press Centre where they give the briefings. A 40-year-old woman running through the streets in the middle of the night. And I wrote on the wall with a marker pen, "Father, forgive, they know not what they do." And I don't even believe in God. Who is Father? Father, forgive, they know not what they do. But there were no other words in the whole English language. If they found out it was me, they would have sent me home. New York Times correspondents must not go running around at 2 o'clock in the morning writing, "Father, forgive." But afterwards I thought, there's no way, there's no one else to whom you can say you're sorry. Well, of course there is someone, there is God, and God is there. But without God, there is no one ultimately to forgive. Christian grace, as I outlined earlier, that comes to us freely through the atoning death and self-sacrifice of Christ, God's Son, is the answer to this dilemma. The fourth problem is what we might call narcissism. Narcissism is the story of the Greek god Narcissus, who was a young man who lay beside a stream, and in the reflection, in the water, he saw his reflection, and he was such a handsome, beautiful young man. He was so kind of entrapped by the beauty of his own reflection. He just stayed by the stream looking at his own face. And people came and said, "Come, you must eat." But he wouldn't come away, until finally he died by the stream, so obsessed with his own personal image. Hence we have the phrase narcissism. People who are obsessively focused upon themselves. Robert Cole, the Harvard professor of psychology and social ethics, says, "A culture not dedicated to the sacred has only itself to take as object. The self becomes sovereign, which leads to narcissism." And what that does is lead to a narcissistic society, a selfish society. And a selfish society accelerates the collapse of community. You cannot have community, you cannot have family unless there is some sense of duty and obligation to other people, some sense of focus outside yourself. The fifth problem is what we might call anti-foundationalism. It's the idea that there are no ultimate foundational truths. It's very difficult to live out consistently. And in fact, I would say that most people who claim to be anti-foundationalist do not live it out consistently in their life. Here is a story that illustrates this problem. Someone was being shown around the Wexner Center for Performing Arts at Ohio State University in the US. It's been described as America's first deconstructionist building. Here's their description. When you enter it, you encounter stairways that go nowhere, pillars that hang from the ceiling without purpose, angled surfaces designed to create a sense of vertigo. The architect designed this building to reflect life itself, senseless and incoherent, and the capriciousness of the rules that organise the built world. I had just one question to ask of the architect. Did he do the same thing with the foundations? Of course not. If he had, the building would not have remained standing. The sixth problem. For those who maintain that there are no absolutes, and that there is no God out there, that there is no transcendent purpose or meaning for life, that we are merely the chance product of matter and time, what are the alternatives? What are the alternatives if you hold that point of view or try to hold it consistently? Well, here are three common ones. The first is to refuse to think about the problem, to refuse to live with the logical conclusion. So you find a diversion. Eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And that's a choice that a lot of people make. The second choice is to decide to invent a reason for living, to live for love or beauty or some ideal that you create or invent or borrow. But all the while, of course, you will be struggling and beating back the heart of darkness, the evil that keeps intruding into our lives. The third choice is despair. And that's frequently expressed by ordinary people, of course, struggling with life's difficulties in the use of drugs or alcohol to subdue the pain. Sometimes it's expressed by artists like Francis Bacon or Edward Munch's famous iconic portraits of distorted heads locked in a perpetual scream, like the drawing on the front of your brochure there. A scream of despair at the world. Sometimes it's expressed in mocking self-deprecation. Here's Fellini, the celebrated Italian film director. Like many people, he wrote, I have no religion. I'm just sitting on a small boat drifting with the tide. I just go on cutting, editing, shooting, looking at life, trying to make others see that today we stand naked and more defenceless than at any time in history. What am I waiting for? I do not know. Perhaps the Martians will come to save us.